and welcome everybody. We are so happy to have you join us today. Go ahead and come on in and get settled. What we would love for you to do is put your name and your location, so where you're joining us from, in the chat so we can say hi. We would appreciate that. I'm going to put mine in so I can let you know where I'm joining from. Hi, April. It's so good to see you. It's good to see Russ Davidson too. Russ is an MAOL grad. So nice of you to join us. I love that. There's Scott. Hi, Amanda. St. Paul, Minnesota. It is good to see you. We're going to get started in just a minute or two. I've got people in the waiting room that I'm going to admit, and then I will get to introduce you to Scott. Just give me a couple of minutes to do that. If you're just now coming in, we would love for you to put your name and where you're joining us from in the chat so that we can have a record of that. My name is Andrea Bishop, and I'm the director for the Center for Leadership and Development at Harding University. And we're going to get started in just a moment. Hello, Mohiba. You probably are our farthest joiner. Welcome. It's so good to see everybody. I love it. I think we can probably go ahead and get started. So good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We are grateful that you made time for us today, and we're excited to share some insight with you. As I said, I'm Dr. Andrea Bishop, and I direct the Center for Leadership and Development at Harding University. I get to oversee our Master of Arts in Organizational Leadership program and our 3 graduate certificates, which are in Human Resources, Training and Development, and Coaching. We have a new piece to our offerings, which is an undergraduate option in Leadership and Innovation. And in addition to these offerings, we also do this wonderful webinar each month, as well as a blog. So we are trying to help people become more effective leaders in every aspect of their lives. I'm excited. I get to learn alongside you today. Scott Mazo has been an amazing advocate for the center, and he's been such a kind mentor to me over the last year. Scott and his wife are both Harding alumni, and he's the director of human resources for the Arizona Pipeline Company. He's active in multiple HR membership groups and has spent 30 years working in the HR field. He and his wife has been married for, is it 31 years, Scott? Is that right?
Yes, 31 years in December.
Wow. So that's amazing. And they have 2 adult daughters. Scott is a leader in the church where he worships, and he teaches part-time for Claremont Graduate University in Claremont, California. He's a busy guy. I'm really grateful he's made time for us today. He's a treasure, and I am so happy I get to share him with you. Scott?
Well, thank you, Andrea, and welcome everyone. It's my pleasure to really be a part of this. As Andrea mentioned, I'm a Harding graduate. I'm a big supporter of Harding. Wish my daughters had gone to Harding. Instead, they chose Pepperdine. So Malibu, California versus Searcy, Arkansas. I tried, but they chose Pepperdine instead, and so I won't be retiring anytime soon. So
Right.
I will be definitely paying for their Malibu experience for a long time. But glad to have my Harding roots. Like Andrea mentioned, I met my wife Andrea there, and so we have very fond memories. I'm excited about the leadership program that they're offering in human resources and in management there, and just couldn't think of a more appropriate program for Harding University students to be a part of. So this morning, we're going to be talking about the future of work and looking at it through the human resources lens. And I'm going to share my screen, and we will start with that presentation. And all right, we'll put that on slideshow mode. All right. Can everybody see my screen, Andrea?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So again, welcome everyone. So I wanted to start with something kind of a pet peeve for me. Does anybody recognize this? The self-checkout at the store. This one happens to be Target. This is sort of a pet peeve of mine, is that, you know, you go in, you do your shopping, and then Target, at least my Target, may have one person working the register, but they sort of expect you as the consumer to do their job for you, and for them, I should say. And they want you to check yourself out. And I think my wife and I always argue. She wants to go through the self-checkout. I want, I'm paying for this product. I'd like for them to check me out and do their job. And so I think about this in terms of how does the human interact with technology and so forth. And I saw this funny picture. This is obviously Walmart here, where they have the sign that they're investing in American jobs right in front of the self-checkout, where they're actually eliminating or reducing the idea of American jobs at their store. And I think that it kind of promotes for me the question of how does technology and certainly AI impact us in the workplace. The idea that AI will replace humans entirely is a complex and controversial topic that depends on various factors, including the capabilities of AI systems, societal choices, and ethical considerations. It's essential to clarify that AI is a tool created and controlled by humans, and its role is primarily to augment human capabilities, automate routine tasks, and assist with decision-making rather than replacing humans outright. And there's a couple of things to consider when we think about technology and the future of HR, the future of humans in the workplace. Certainly, the automation of routine tasks, and I think maybe that's why Walmarts and Targets have the automation there of routine tasks. The enhancing decision making, they can analyze, AI can analyze maybe a lot more data and more quickly and aid in decision making. It can take dangerous or dull jobs, certainly, and reduce the risk to humans. We see where technology and robotics has done that, reduce the risk to human employees. It is meant to be an augment, but not a replacement for human interaction. But there are ethical and societal considerations. And so what are the implications of this? What are the implications of this? Well, here's the first one. The last two slides were written entirely by ChatGPT. Those is not my original work. That was written in about a half a second using AI. And what are the implications of that? Well, there's a lack of ownership on my account. There's no emotion, no creativity, and literally no effort on my part to create that rather detailed outline of technology and AI as it relates to the workplace. And there's some ethical issues around that, right? I could pass this off as my own work product, and maybe those that don't know me would say and accept that. They would just accept that as my own work product. And so there's issues around that, and certainly there is this idea that it could reduce the need for humans in the workplace, reduce jobs. Do you even need me to present this session? Could I have just created an AI presentation and uploaded it to Andrea, and you all would be watching, something that was generated by a computer instead of somebody who has 30 years of experience in the field? And so these are some of the things that we're going to talk about today as we consider the future. We certainly cannot underestimate the power of technology as it relates to the future. So if you have your cell phones, normally we don't invite people to take cell phones into a presentation, but if you have your cell phones, get the camera ready. I'm going to be asking you to do an interactive survey with me, and I'm going to ask you a question. Have any of you heard the term VUCA world? We live in a VUCA world. What does VUCA mean? So if you take your camera and scan that QR code, it'll invite you to answer and respond in real time to what VUCA means. And I'm wondering if anybody's heard this term, a VUCA world. Okay, so we've got one already responded. That's great. Anybody else have? So we've got, looks like we have 5 people responded, 6 people responded. Excellent. Let's see if anybody else responds. But so far, 6 people have responded. And what their response has been at this point is that we live in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. And the answer is correct. That is correct. We do live in a VUCA world. If you haven't heard this term, I have heard it a lot lately in a lot of professional presentations. And the idea is that we live in a world that's full of volatility. There is no stability. It's changing every day. We're uncertain from day to day, from week to week. We're uncertain what the future holds. There's certainly a lot of complexity in the world today, and as it relates to technology, as it relates to social issues, as it relates to moral issues, and ambiguity. What is right, what is wrong, what is true, what is false, all of that seems to be in question. And certainly we live in a VUCA world, and this certainly overlaps into our workplace, and that the workplace can become more volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous for the leadership and certainly HR professionals. So with that as a background, we are certainly not even in a world where this is the new normal. I heard a term the other day that I think expresses it even better, that we're in a world of never normal, that we're never returning back to whatever we considered to be normal in both the world and in the workplace. So that begs the question is, how does this affect the future of HR? How do you as leaders prepare yourself for the future of human resources? Not only with technology issues, not only with artificial intelligence, but also just the changing landscape of social and emotional, physical needs within the workplace. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is the role of human resources in the future of work. So I'm glad that you're here to go along for the ride with me. The first thing that I would say is we have what I consider 5 non-negotiable pillars for HR leaders. And the first thing I would say is you've got to keep people first. And this is so critical. We've got to continue to keep the human in human resources. When you think about the role of HR and the chosen profession of many of us, HR is the epitome of servant leadership to people. This is the role that is meant to serve our employees and the related people associated with our organizations. Certainly directly, we service our employees, we serve the stakeholders of our organizations, we serve the customers, and we serve the organization. We serve the organizational needs. This is a service role. But in addition, we serve indirectly the families of employees. I have had the unfortunate but necessary role of having to deal with employees' families that are dealing with a death in the family. And so the employee of ours, their family member died. And so they're looking to HR to make that a smooth transition, to answer all of their questions in a very difficult time. So in HR, I'm not only serving the employees, I'm also sometimes serving the family of employees. And one of the great benefits of working in HR is we get to serve our local communities. We get to help out, whether it's with backpack drives for the beginning of school, or maybe toy drives during Christmas time. We get to serve the local communities and represent our company that way. And so really, we have a responsibility and an accountability to our people, So we need to keep people first as the first pillar in HR. So how do we do that? How do we keep people first? First of all, we need to provide a safe place. If you look at any sort of survey or research, employees expect at the very minimum that they're going to work at a safe place. And that could mean physically safe. Certainly, we know that there's a terrible experiences with violence in the workplace. We need to make sure that we can protect it against that. But it needs to be a physically safe, mentally safe, emotionally safe workplace. And certainly HR has a big part to play in providing that safe workplace. Secondly, we need to provide a workplace, an organization, and promote a organization that is fair and equitable to all people. Make sure that everybody has their voice heard. We need to communicate. Of course, communication is always top on the list, but we need to listen. Listening is part of communication. So we don't need to just be sending messages out to the workforce. We need to hear what they have to say to us and create opportunities for us to hear their voice. In HR, our role is also to create opportunities for success. Most people, when they join an organization, don't necessarily want to be in that role for the rest of their career. They want to be able to grow and develop. And we want to be able to provide opportunities for them to do that. And that'll come into play a little bit later in the presentation. Another way that we put people first is we hold people accountable. Now, this is interesting. You may not think about holding people accountable as putting people first, but it does. If you let people that underperform or do not have values consistent with your organizational culture continue to work in your organization, that drives down, that pushes down the culture and makes that behavior, those attitudes acceptable in your organization. So we need to hold people accountable in HR. And lastly, as we talk about technology, we need to make sure that technology serves the people and not the other way around. That we are not having people serve the technology. In other words, the systems and the processes need to be driving towards a better people experience, not trying to force people into some sort of artificial technology or process or system. That's how we keep people first, is by having technology serve us instead of the other way around. One of the most important ways that HR can keep people first is promote wellness in the office. This is probably one of the most critical issues of our time right now. There is a mental health crisis in our schools, in our families, in our churches, and at work. This is going to come to your front door, whether it already has or it will in the future. This is especially affecting negatively young men, and there's a whole a lot of research about that young men are especially negatively affected by mental health issues right now. SHRM reports that there were sharp declines in employees' holistic health over the last few years, physical, financial, mental, social. Just 65% of the employees say that they are mentally well. If you were to think about your workforce and think about the other 35% that are not mentally well, how does that impact them? How does that impact their work? How does that impact their whole life, their family? 33% of employees say that they've had a negative, their job has had a negative impact on their mental health. HR can help correct that. That's part of our role in help keeping people first, is making sure that we provide a positive work environment for people to succeed in. 61% of Gen Z would leave their current work, not for more money, not for a new laptop, not for remote work, but for better mental health benefits. And that should be a cue for us as we think about how we can promote our value proposition to this workforce. Is what do they need? Loneliness and isolation is a growing problem on the job. You know, people think that the ideal workplace might be a remote job, but in reality, they're cut off from all kind of communication and social interaction. And that loneliness and isolation can grow to be a big problem. And so lastly, I just think we should consider the evolving needs of our workforce when we think about the benefits that we offer to our employees. So that is the first pillar, keeping the human in human resources, keeping people first. The second one would be, as HR leaders, we need to create value. Nobody owes us a career. Nobody owes us a job. We need to go in there and earn our place. And we do that by creating value for the organization, for the stakeholders, and for the employees. You know, HR has to be more than just a tactical position. We have to be more than just paperwork and forms and policies and procedures. We have to be a strategic player in the organization in order for us to add value. So how do we do that? How do we create value in the organization? I would say first and foremost, we have to be curious. We need to learn the language and metrics of our business. I work in a construction company, and one of the things that I like to do is go out to the field and see the work being done by the people in the field. I want to learn the language, the types of equipment, the types of work that they do there. How do we measure success? I need to know the financial pieces of our company, of our organization. And so be curious. Don't just keep your HR hat on, but take that off and learn the language and of your organization and how you measure success. Know who your competitors are. You need to be strategic. And partly the way you do that is you create and communicate a vision for HR. When I joined this company, I was so pleased when my leaders said to me, Scott, after 90 days of employment, we want you to present your vision for the human resources department for this company. I couldn't have asked for a better situation. And so I spent the first 90 days learning my company, trying to learn as much as I can, be as curious as I could be. And then I developed a yearly vision, an annual vision for this organization that I rolled out, that I'm continuing to execute on. And it wasn't just tactical, it was very strategic oriented. And so that's a way that we can add value to our company. Be visible, be present. You know, it is so easy to get stuck to your keyboard, answering emails and not getting out and walking around. Be part of the big conversations. And if you're not part of the big conversations, invite yourself, but make sure you have something to say. Bring the value, communicate the value of HR, celebrate strategic wins. When I sign a big contract with a vendor or a supplier that I think is going to be a huge help in helping us achieve our HR strategic goals, I communicate that to the leaders. I let them know this is why we did this. This is why we're investing resources in this. And this is why I think there's a positive outcome at the end of this if we use it. Show how HR can be a force for future growth. So many of our operational people are just about the day-to-day. They're just trying to grind out their production numbers, their quality numbers, whatever their financial results are. It's up to HR to sort of keep that 30,000-foot view and help them prepare for the future. And HR can help be that force for future growth. And the last thing I would say is all of these are beautiful, pretty words if we don't execute. You've got to execute. HR has to be known as a department, as a role that executes, that delivers on what we promise. Be the one that follows through. The next non-negotiable pillar for HR leaders is to grow the next generation of leaders. We need to grow leaders. You know, the challenges for today and tomorrow's leaders are enormous. The list goes on and on. You know, our leader and manager effectiveness preparation right now isn't preparing leaders for future work. I can say that in my own company. We are not doing a good enough job at preparing our leaders for future work. I need to do a better job with that. You know, organizational design and change management. We need to be preparing our leaders for not the status quo of today, but for what's next. And, you know, it's often referred to as change management, but I think it should be called change leadership. But the problem with change is that we're all fatigued from all the change. And so it's up to HR to get people excited, engaged, and bought into why we are changing and what the benefits of that change can be. We have to have a better employee experience too. Do you have a compelling onboarding program, a career path program? Do you know your value proposition? Why should people come to work for you instead of the employer across the street? Do you know that? And do you market that? Do you promote that? And so all of these things are the challenges that we are, as HR leaders, are facing. When you think about that, you also think about recruitment. How do we attract talent? The numbers are not in our favor. You know, according to the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics, there's 8.8 million job openings, but there's only 6.4 million unemployed people. So if we hired every single unemployed person, we're still looking at 2 million positions left unfilled. How do we attract in this very challenging and very competitive marketplace? How do we attract the best talent? And then, of course, the future of work, which is our topic today. You know, workforce planning in the current model is looking at the skills we need, the talent scarcity, the increased turnover, the shift in employee dynamic. What I mean by that is employees used to just sort of do what we said as leadership, but now they're kind of pushing back. They have more of a voice. And so when we look to the future, you know, we got to anticipate the future skills that we need. We should be reading and articles and attending webinars about the future needs of work, especially in the space that we're in, and getting ourselves prepared for that. We got to be flexible in redeploying our resources across the organization. We need to be doing that quickly. If we see one resource being underutilized and another resource being overtaxed, we've got to be able to make those connections in HR leadership and make sure people can fit into the right places at the right time. We've got to find more innovative sourcing models. When we're trying to attract people to our positions, the LinkedIns, the Indeeds, the ZipRecruiters may not be enough to fill our roles. And of course, when you look at the employee-employer dynamic, we're now at a position where we've got to empower both parties to achieve a desired way of working. Because if we don't, If we don't have that sort of win-win mindset, employees will leave and they'll go somewhere else, and you'll be left with that vacancy trying to fill. There are hard skills that every leader must have. And this is not a complete list, but this is just the beginning. Financial, communication, negotiation, operational, people management, conflict resolution, integrity, be an innovator, and the list goes on and on and on. And in addition to these hard skills, they've got to have soft skills too. They've got to be adaptable. They've got to be culturally competent. They've got to have emotional intelligence, empathy. They've got to be a good listener. They've got to be inspiring. They've got to be optimistic. And I guess I ask the question to myself a lot of times is, are we asking too much of one person? Can one leader do all these things? Can they be all things to all people? And this is the challenge, again, of preparing for the future. Is our leadership model is continuing to be more and more complex and demand more and more. So what is your role in developing leaders? Certainly you need to attract and retain the best. And this is, I'm sure, on everybody's to-do list as they go back to their office, is how do I attract the best leaders? More than likely, it means stealing them from another organization, because your best leaders are going to already be working at either your competitor or at another company down the road. But you've got to have a compelling value proposition and a competitive offer to attract and retain the best. The second thing is you've got to become a learning organization. People will see the value of staying with your company if they know that they're growing and developing in that role. We've got to develop promotional and also lateral career moves. Not everybody is going to move up, and that may not be the best course of action for everybody at that time. We got to look for lateral, sideways moves that also help develop leaders in their role and provide them a variety of new tasks and strategies to learn. Part of HR is to assess for skill gaps and train for those gaps. How do we even know what is missing within our leaders if we don't assess for them? And there's some great assessment tools out there that I encourage you to look at if you're not already using them, to help assess what those gaps might be, and then look at that as an opportunity to train and develop for those gaps. We need to know our ABC players. Within your own organization, do you know who your top performers are that you want to invest resources in? We need B players too. We need those solid citizens that just come in and do their work every day and keep the wheels on the bus. But do we also know who our C players are? And in HR, that means that we need to be able to manage up or manage out. One of the hard truths of being an HR leader is that if somebody is underperforming and does not have the potential for growth, they're blocking somebody else from being in that role. They're taking up a valuable spot that somebody else could be taking, could be filling, that has more potential. And so the hard truth is that sometimes we have to manage out our C players. And lastly, and you all know this, we have to accelerate. We do not have 20 years, 30 years to develop a leader. The speed of the marketplace and the organization is such that we have to develop leaders today that have to be ready to go in the next 3 to 5 years. We have to accelerate. We have to create programs that get people up to speed more quickly than they did in the past. The next pillar for HR leaders as we look to the future is we need to manage the talent life cycle of our employees. What do I mean by that? The idea of lifetime employment is probably an old way of thinking. I don't know that a lot of 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds are joining an organization thinking they're going to be there when they retire. Now, some might, But a lot of people are not looking for this lifetime employment opportunity anymore. They're instead looking for lifetime employability. What can I do? How can I job hop to continue to gain skills, to keep me employed, to keep me growing, to keep me making more money, to keep me challenged? And so as HR, we've got to help manage that life cycle. And certainly that starts with the strategy for bringing a new person into the organization from the beginning. When you have a vacancy, do you just automatically go, well, we need to replace them? Or do you think about, wait a minute, here's an opportunity. We have a vacancy. Who do we want to bring into this company? How do we want to take advantage, full advantage of this vacancy? Do we want to just replace like for like, or do we want to take the opportunity to maybe upskill this role? In the recruitment process, we start the decision making. How do we choose who to bring on board? What is our pre-boarding process like? What is our onboarding process like? Do we even have an onboarding? Is it just, here's your company phone, here's your laptop, here's how you log into your email, here's where the company kitchen is, here's where the bathroom is, welcome, good luck? Is that the extent of our onboarding program, or do we have more to offer them? What's our performance management and learning and development program look like for our employees? Do we have succession planning in mind when we hire somebody? And then there's something that I know I don't do very well, which is offboarding. You know, do we have a culture that supports people that maybe they've run the course with us and they want to move on to something else, and we wish them the best. We want them to help them be successful, even if it's somewhere else. And all of this has to do with culture, building a culture, because our culture is our brand. And the way we behave and the way that we act is what our culture is all about. You know, our culture is not limited to the posters that we might have on the walls that have inspirational thoughts or sayings on them. Our culture is actually the day-to-day, how we behave, how we act, and how we treat people. And we need to build that culture into the talent life cycle. So how do we cultivate a talent life cycle? We have to manage expectations. And we have to set expectations for our own people. We need to have a shared mission, values, and vision. We need to let people know the purpose, what purpose they serve in the organization, give them value, make sure they understand how they fit into the overall success of the company. We need to make sure that there's opportunities for everyone to succeed. Obviously, flexibility, work-life balance is a huge issue for the incoming workforce. We need to have proper care and feeding of our employees. We need to make sure that we're teaching our employees new things, invest in technology, and of course, work hard and play hard. Make sure that we celebrate successes, we recognize achievements, and we reward people for that. The last pillar that I think is important for future HR leaders is you've got to build a resilient organization. And what do I mean by that? What do I mean by building a resilient organization? You know, leaders build resilience by establishing and promoting team stability, connection, and agility. To be a future-based team requires resilience. You know, to deal with the status quo does not require resilience. You just keep coming in and doing the same thing every day. That is not the definition of resilience. But resilience teams absorb stress, they recover quickly, and they thrive in change. And so I ask the question, does this describe you as a leader? Does this describe your organization? Does this describe your HR team? Do you absorb stress? Do you recover quickly? Do you thrive in change? So what are some of the building blocks of building resiliency? The first one is stability, communicating a purpose, making sure people understand that what they do and how they do it is important. Give them clarity on their purpose in the organization. Inspire and reinforce the team's common goals. Give them some unity. And that leads us to the next one, which is connection. Resilient teams are connected. They share information. They're connected both functionally and emotionally. They thrive with information and knowledge. There's so many sports metaphors that I could give here with connection. You look at a team striving to reach the World Series or the World Championships of their sport. This is a team that has unity and purpose. They're tightly connected, both functionally and emotionally, each one doing their role to the best of their ability. And then we got to have agility. We've got to adhere to simple rules. Agility, be prepared for action, set appropriate team boundaries. We need to pivot. This is so hard in today's workplace sometimes, is to pivot when necessary. We need to simplify complexity. And when we make mistakes, let's learn from them. Share those vital lessons. Don't condemn mistakes, but learn from them. Use them as learning opportunities. And so I've shared with you today the 5 non-negotiable pillars for HR leaders. The first one is to keep people first. Keep the human in human resources. The second one is to add value as an HR leader in your organization. The third one is to grow future leaders. The fourth one is to manage that talent life cycle. Make sure you establish a culture where people can succeed, hopefully within your organization, but sometimes even outside of your organization. And that lastly, build a resilient organization. And I ask the question, if you're not going to do it, who will? I assume that because you're either part of this program or attending this webinar, that you're anxious to take on the mantle of the future HR leaders in your organization. And I applaud you for that. And I think that I am optimistic about the future of HR leaders within the United States. I think if we apply these pillars, stick to them, we can make a big difference in our organizations and to our employees. Never forgetting that our employees are the absolute backbone of our organizations. So with that, I'm going to ask for a little feedback. How do you feel about your future in HR? This is going to be a word cloud. Go ahead and type in a word that describes how you feel about your future in HR leadership. Are you prepared? Are you anxious? Are you nervous? Are you confident about how the future looks to you in human resources? Oh, anxious, that's very honest, very honest. Excited, confident, good. Good. Optimistic, that's wonderful. You know, HR should be optimistic. You should always be looking for what our opportunities are for the future. But it is anxious, you know, the future is unknown. We don't know what the future has to hold. Possibilities exist, absolutely. Possibilities exist, perfect, wonderful. All right, well, with that, I am going to say thank you for your attention and thank you for your feedback. And we have some time left over, and I'm welcome to any feedback or questions you might have. I'd certainly love to hear your own experiences if you have something to share with the group, and I'll turn it back over to Andrea.
Thank you, Scott. That was informative. It was wonderful. And you filled us with a lot of very rich information. I took away some some really good points that, I mean, I feel like even if you're not in HR, that this information is useful for basically anyone who works in the workplace. So I just want to appreciate you for that. We would love for you to put something in the chat, like a takeaway, a word, a phrase, an idea that you're going to leave with today, because educational research shows us that if you quickly write about what you just learned, you're actually going to remember it. So if you want to put that in the chat, it's good for you, but it's also good for us. And we would love to see that, as well as any questions that you might have, of course. And so while you are considering what you've thought about and what you've learned from Scott today, I would like to tell you that we do have a graduate certificate in HR. It can be partnered with our Master of Arts in Organizational Leadership, but it also could be a standalone grad certificate. So if you're interested in something like that, please reach out to me after the webinar and I can give you some information. Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, Jean and April and Russ. I love seeing all of these positive comments about the future of HR, because I feel like so often HR gets such a bad rap. And I mean, frankly, I see it as kingdom work. I mean, if we don't have good Christians working in HR, then we're really missing an opportunity. So I'm so grateful to Scott for the kingdom work that he does with his company. Really quickly, let me plug our next webinar. On October the 25th, we will have a webinar on the topic of mentorship. And one of our instructors, Dr. Nathan Copeland, will share with us the value of being a mentor leader, or a leader who mentors. And that'll be October 25th at noon. And there will be information that I can send out about how to sign up for that later. So we do hope that this information has been very helpful for you, that it's been encouraging for you. And if you have any questions or if something comes up later, please let Scott and I know. You can reach us both at this email address, maol@harding.edu. That's maol@harding.edu. And I will receive it and pass it on to Scott if there's a question you have for him. If you'd like a copy of the presentation, if you'd like to share it with coworkers, or you just want it for your own edification, you can also email me and ask for that. I'm happy to share that. So we thank you so much for joining us today. One of my goals as a leader is to always end a meeting early, because I think if we can give back some time to our employees, then we are being an effective leader. So it looks like we're going to be able to give you back maybe 12 or 13 minutes of time today. So thank you so much for joining us, and we really appreciate your engagement. And thank you so much to Scott. Bye.
Thank you.